Our camera is working. There we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Dustin. I'm one of the customer success managers here at Buildxact. Thank you very much for joining me today for our webinar. Oof, gosh, that's the wrong that's the wrong title. My saving didn't work. Anyway, that's not the title of today's webinar. Today's webinar is focusing on what's new in Buildxact. So the name of the game for today's webinar is really simple. We've got a really exciting agenda locked in for you. And essentially where we're going to start today's webinar is by taking a quick look at some learning resource support options. From there, we're going to focus on our first topic of our What's New webinar, and that's going to be exploring the dashboard a little bit more. I'm sure many of you have probably already noticed some fantastic new enhancements there, but we're going to take a little bit of time just to go through them and really try to touch on some tips and tricks to help you get the most out of that section. From there, we're going to dive into the digital acceptance enhancements. Now, again, this area isn't necessarily new. We have had digital acceptance for quite a while now, but we have some changes to how you would how you would do the digital acceptance, as well as rolling it out into a few different areas. More on that in a little bit. From there, we're going to talk around the client portal upgrades, and that's going to be both upgrades directly in the portal, as well as a couple different ways in which we have made it easier to essentially share information into the portal. So we're going to look at both of those sides today. From there, we're going to jump into our labs section. Again, that might be familiar to some of you, but we're going to touch on that, go through that for those of you who haven't a chance to check out the labs area, and again, just highlight some of the really cool stuff that our team's been working on there. Last but not least, today we're going to focus really just on a range of miscellaneous minor enhancements. Now, they don't let the word minor get in the way here. There are some fantastic fantastic enhancements we've made really all across the system. Just lots of little things to continue to make it really easy. And again, taking in that feedback and giving what we're being asked to create. So a really exciting agenda ahead of us today and lots of great stuff to get stuck into. The last thing I want to quickly mention today is if you have any questions at all during today's webinar, please do feel free to send across your questions via a little Q&A button down near the bottom middle of your screen. I will pause periodically for to see if anybody does have any questions. If you're like me, you can't really talk and type at the same time. So I will pause as we go through each of the sections to see if anybody has any questions. But of course, please do feel free to send it across as soon as the question comes in, and I'll be sure to jump on that as soon as I can. All right, so let me close that down there. Awesome. So our first thing we're going to talk a little bit about here today is the dashboard. Now, the dashboard, like I said, is probably not much of a surprise to many of you. It's again been an enhancement that has been around for a couple months now, and it's one that sort of just jumps right into your face here. So up at the top here, we have our reminders section. And that's going to be one of the primary ways which you can leave just little notifications for yourself. We know life is full of lots of those little reminders, little follow-ups, little tasks and all that. So this reminder section is a great new feature where you can actually go ahead and just record a reminder for yourself. So I might say, you know, call Bob to order materials. I can then obviously select the date and the time in which that's going to be sent out. And then from there, I can even choose to have Buildxact send an SMS, and it could be to you, could be an employee or somebody else outside your business, but you can go ahead and punch in the SMS and the email. And in that case, it will then send that reminder out at that time, and voila, there we go. Now, once you have all those reminders in there, and as you're starting to get using it, we know some people prefer the list format. Some people might want to look happening that day, that week, or that month. And we also give the ability to toggle different what's displayed. So do you want to see all reminders, or do you want to see only the reminders not sent? So again, just kind of an easy way just to sort of organize all those little things in your life, and again, bring that across. Next up, we have our recent items. And that really hasn't changed too much. It wasn't broke, so no need to fix it. But the idea there is simply that as you access your different estimates and your different jobs, you can quickly jump back into them at that section. Next up, we have our schedule here in Buildxact. And again, the global schedule, as we refer to it, isn't new in the sense that it was in the previous dashboard interface as well. But what we've done is just give you a newer, more modern way to view it. And then from there, you can search also by resource. We've given you some different views in which you can view the dashboard. And of course, from there, you can print, see what's on today and those sorts of things. So again, just endeavoring to give you a little bit more of a high level overview and make that a little bit easier as you try to manage all the different things that are going on across your various projects. Now, with that being said, I want to quickly jump over to this Explore section just to give a little bit of love to this area. Now, this isn't new, but it's always worthwhile to touch base, and we actually do have something new in here, so kind of newish. But in this Explore section, this is where we're going to park a lot of our learning training content, including our What's New section. And so really this What's New section, this is again one of the primary ways which we're going to communicate with you around these new and updated features. And so it's definitely worthwhile to take a look at it. But like I said, we like to run these webinars anyways, because we know sometimes little things slip through the cracks, or maybe you see it, but you don't really have enough time to sort of get in and explore it or play around with it, or maybe you just have some lingering questions. So that's really what we want to tackle today. But of course, as always, in between these webinars, we have this little What's New section just to keep you up to date. As always, FAQs, video tutorials are there for you. Feature suggestion is in there as well, and I'm going to plug that a lot today, primarily because pretty much everything that's come from our new features and enhancements has really come from feedback that we've gotten. So it's one of those things where the more something has votes and requests on it, then those things are more likely to get built quicker than not. And of course, we're always consulting with our users to test ideas, to meet with them, to understand their needs, and again, continuing to roll those features enhancements out, again, driven by people just like you. So definitely worthwhile to make sure your voice is heard. And again, you do that through that feature suggestion area. Of course, as always, if you need to reach out to our support team, quick plug, they're always working away, answering lots of questions. So you can always reach out to them via send us a message, which is located here, here, and over here as well too. So that being said, I'm going to pause here for a quick second just to see if anybody has any quick questions. Relatively straightforward topics, but just curious if anybody has any questions about those first two topics. From here, we're going to jump into the digital acceptance, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I'll pause here for a quick second. All right, I don't see any questions. So my little thingy disappeared there. Where is it? There we go. All right, yeah, no, don't see any questions. So let's motor on here today. And next up, we're going to jump into an estimate and talk a little bit about digital acceptance. So let me go ahead and pick up on this one. There we go. And essentially, for those of you that don't know, digital acceptance is a workflow where effectively you can get your client to, as the name implies, digitally accept the quote in this case, either through email or through the client portal. Now, the big change around on the quote letter side of it is we've actually consolidated the buttons together. So before there used to be a share and then an email button. And what we've done is we've essentially consolidated those together, because what we've done now, just to increase the method of communication, is you can actually now do one, the other, or both in the same shot. So again, we're just looking to make it as easy as possible to get that information to your client, and again, through whatever means necessary. So from here, when you are ready to share the client, as always, you do have the trusted print option there. But under the share selection here, this is where it's going to basically take us through a couple quick steps to give us some options here, such as, are we going to send it via the standard workflow? That's where clients can just view it and download it. Or are we going to do it via digital acceptance? And again, that's when the client can then get that option to digitally accept it. Under the recipient stage, I don't have a client portal deployed, but if I did, there'll be a little client portal section there where I could then share it into the client portal and then obviously further email it out as well too. And then from there, we've got the email section, which again, just allows you to customize this to your preference in terms of just communicating to them around, hey, here's your quote letter. We also have introduced presets into this section, which is really, really highly requested as well. And you're going to see those presets filter down to a couple other areas around email communication here in the next little bit as we continue to do some front end enhancements. But from there, obviously, you can add any additional attachments. And then essentially with a click of a button, you can then share that in for both digital acceptance through email and through Client Portal. Now, for those of you that aren't super familiar with the digital acceptance, I am going to take a look and show you in the Client Portal when we get to that section here shortly. But essentially, the gist of it is that the client will then receive the email or the Client Portal notification. They can then view the quote, and then with the click of a button, they can then digitally accept it. And upon digital acceptance, it's then going to basically email you back to let you know that they've signed it, but it's also going to have a little pop-up in the system here, just letting you know that, yep, they've essentially digitally accepted that. And the status will also automatically be updated to digital accepted, just to, again, to sort of further make it a bit easier for you to identify, oh, yeah, that's the one, and essentially pick up and carry on with the next stages of that project as you need to go through those areas. Now, from that, we have taken upon lots of requests, and we've now taken that digital acceptance feature to other areas in the platform here. So I'm going to quickly just spin up a job just for conversation's sake today. And what we've done is we've now looked to roll that out for our change orders. So I'll quickly just whip a change order here just as an example. I'll say pool edition. And I'm just going to chuck a quick item in here just as an example. So we'll say, yep, pool at, let's just say it's $19,000 or something like that each. We'll chuck on some markup and some tax. So that part of it stays the same, but the part that is different now is when I go save and close, I'm going to get that share button again. So same process as before, but now we're looking to share the change order in order to essentially have the client digitally accept that. And again, marking the digital acceptance, going through the same steps as before. So again, we know that digital acceptance in the variations is a really, really big deal, just because, again, traditionally, and it obviously depends quite a bit on the project, but we know that there's going to be a lot more change orders, probably are than quote letters. So great to have the quote letter ticked off just to keep that speed and efficiency moving across, but also very helpful in the change orders section here to, again, just to streamline a lot of that workflow back and forth and make sure you can stay focused on the job ahead and get everything done in that particular area. Okay, now one other quick point I'm going to make here around the variation is sort of like I made back in the quote letter, but once the status, when they has been digitally accepted, it's going to be marked then automatically as digitally accepted. But a quick note that if it is digitally accepted, that doesn't automatically push it into the actual costings. We wanted to just give a little bit of space there for you to essentially then, once it is digitally accepted, then you'd go in and mark it as accepted. And from there, it will then automatically update accordingly. So again, we just have that little bit of a buffer space. And I just want to quickly highlight that there, just in case somebody thought, well, it's digital accepted. Why isn't it showing up in my actual costings or my outgoing invoicing? And that's the why. It's just that interim accepting. And then we want to fully move it across. Awesome. So on that, going to pause here for a quick second. Like I said, we will come back to digital acceptance here in a couple minutes as we start to gravitate towards some updates to the client portal. But I'm going to pause here for a quick second just to see if anybody has any questions around the digital acceptance section. All right. I noticed there's quite a few people actually just looking at the list here. There's a couple, well, not quite a couple, quite a few people have joined us since I might have mentioned it, but just in case you did mention it, the Q&A button in order to send questions across is just down near the bottom. That'll be near the bottom of your screen. It'll be Q&A. Give that a click, send across your questions, and yeah, I'll be happy to take some time and answer them. All right. But I don't see any questions coming in yet, so let's go ahead and jump into the next exciting section of our webinar, and that is to focus a little bit on the client portal. So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the client portal isn't necessarily new. It's been around for a little while with us here at Buildxact, but we're always continuing to take it through a number of upgrades, really with the goal of helping to streamline a lot of that communication, saving time, and creating a better experience for your clients, setting yourself apart from the competition. We're hearing a lot that there's really kind of two main factors as to why a lot of Buildxact builders and trades are winning more work now. And that is both because, again, time to first quote is is still one of the most important things. But when a client has two great looking quotes beside them, again, a really good way to differentiate yourself, really setting yourself apart and portraying, again, a real professional modern brand is through the client portal. So if you haven't checked that out already, highly recommend it. But the first thing we want to talk about around our enhancements, I want to go back to our job details section here. And the first thing that we can do is we actually have the ability to select multiple items and share them in one single shot. So instead of before sharing one file or another, we know in reality, a lot of people are going to take multiple photos or have multiple documents and information. And essentially, you can then click all the items you want and then effectively bulk share them across. Now, one of the other really cool things that you can do as a part of this is, if I just go back and have one item, is you can actually go ahead and add a description on there. So really, really handy in terms of when you share it across. And once you do share it, you are going to be given the ability to add those items to the timeline, which is a brand new feature in Buildxact. And jumping into the client portal, this is what the timeline looks like. Now, in terms of how it works, it's relatively straightforward, but essentially before you could always share documents and quotes and all that sort of stuff across. But what we're being requested to do is to basically, again, have a timeline and more importantly, to sort of show the linear progression of the build. So we know many people will want to start off with, before photos, they'll want to then communicate with the client around progress and updates and really, again, just keep them abreast of all the things that are happening and being on top of that communication, providing, again, a really clean client experience. So again, you can upload that information into Buildxact through the same ways you could before. Select multiple items, share them across, and when you share it across, you can also include a quick little description as well. So essentially, you just keep sharing it as you go. That will always share that information into the relevant section as well. Typically, it goes into documents for pictures and stuff like that. So that'll all go in here. But again, it will display on the timeline. And of course, the client can always go ahead and say, yep, looks great. But hey, quick question about this. Or, again, streamline that communication through the client portal and just, again, try to get them off email because email is very challenging, shall we say. Cool. So that's the client timeline. The other thing I wanted to mention, I was kind of talking a bit about here a few moments ago, was the digital acceptance. So I'll quickly just jump into plans. I don't have a change order shared across here. Oh, sorry, not plans, quotes rather. But I wanted to just quickly mention, because I know some people don't always see this side of it, but now here in the client portal, if I click into an item, this is where the client, from their experience in the client portal, can then digitally accept this document. So pretty easy. If you take them, if it goes through the email, it's a relatively similar experience. It's just going to pop them into the portal where they can then, or a portal where they can then view that document and then can digitally accept that. So super, super handy. The other thing we've done as well too is just around the communication side of it. So we're getting a lot of feedback from a lot of our builders that their clients are giving them that in terms of not really feeling they're receiving quite as quick notifications and staying up to date with it. Primarily before, we were only sending summary updates, either based on an hour, twice daily, or daily. But what we've done now is we've basically still kept those, but the different times when you send communication, it will also send them an email at the same time as well. So they have that instantaneous notification that now there's something in their portal, as well as the diary email, which will still send them based, again, on their preferences, hourly, twice daily, or daily, and they set that on their side, just to, again, keep them abreast of all the different things that are happening around the client portal. And ultimately here, again, we're trying to increase the responsiveness, both of the client to things that you're sharing across and vice versa as well too. So just something to keep in mind. And if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend to actually create yourself as a lead and actually spin up your own client portal and communicate with yourself back and forth. For many people, it's one thing to hear it. It's another thing to see it in videos, but it's a total next level when you get the ability to actually go in and experiment a little bit with yourself. So highly recommend it. And again, if you're not already using the client portal, then please do feel free to check that out. And you can even book some training in as well. We're happy to take you through anything further along those lines. All right, so check out my notes. So that's the client portal, talking a bit about how to share multiple items from the documents widget, talking about timeline, and just looping back into the section there of the digital acceptance. I'll pause here for a quick sec to see if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, moving along quite quickly today, and a couple more things ahead of us. So I'll pause here for a quick second to see if there's any questions. All right. Nope, don't see any questions, so let's carry on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to quickly jump in and talk a little bit about the Buildxact Labs area. Now, this is an area that has been a huge amount of fun for our development team here at Buildxact. And essentially, the core of this is that Buildxact's mission is, and well, was and still is, to empower the residential construction industry to be simpler, more efficient, and more successful. And a key element of that is all about looking to bring new and innovative solutions to our users. So what we're seeing here are essentially early access to features that our development team has been working on. This is where we want to introduce you to them maybe before they're a little bit more refined, which is what typically we do when we roll out new features. So these are a little bit rougher around the edges, might occasionally come up with some bugs and whatnot, but we don't want to restrict that from really getting you access to that. And again, just to both have that ability to test it, provide some recommendations and some enhancements, and items on this list that get more feature requests and more feedback, they're more likely to move to the top of the list to get fully fleshed out and then fully deployed as a regular bit of functionality. So absolutely worth checking these out. My two favorites are the site diary. We know this has been, and continues to be a bit of a challenge for a lot of our builders and trades. We're trying to keep up to date with, all the documentation and requirements as to what's happening on the site, more for internal purposes. That can be a bit of a struggle. And so what this does is it essentially combines the site diary into Buildxact, located right in the job. So you have that ability to keep all your notes and any photos and whatnot related to just the ongoing day-to-days of the site in one single spot. So super handy. I also love the global search. This essentially just allows you that instead of going into a particular section like leads, estimates of jobs, or the purchase orders, the outgoing invoicing, once you toggle this on, you actually have that ability to, in a single spot, search for keywords, and that will then go through the entire Buildxact system from contacts to estimates to purchase orders, jobs, and everything else, and essentially make come up with this search results of what you're essentially looking for. So really, really handy, especially for those users who have been around for quite a long time. We know it's pretty easy to get a lot of jobs and a lot of estimates and just a lot of information in the system. And sometimes going back and finding those historical records can be a bit tricky. Or if you're not quite sure what you're looking for, but you just want to do some keyword searching to try to flush out what you might be, have in your mind, you need. It's really, really handy for that. So of course, with any of this stuff, again, I said it's stuff that we're working on. So as always, please do feel free to keep your feedback coming across about these features. And again, the more votes it gets, the more feedback we get, the more quickly that is going to then be deployed as a fully functioning feature. So check that out. And again, lots of great stuff in here and more great stuff coming in a few months once the team gets some time to do some more of this stuff. All right. So from there, we're going into our last topic of our What's New webinar today. And we want to touch now on, again, sort of this minor enhancements. Now, again, I hate using that word minor because a lot of the stuff, it might not be grandiose like the feature time or like the timeline or streamlining of the digital acceptance, but a lot of little things that we're continuously getting feedback on and we can essentially deploy to you to make your life a little bit easier. So the first one of those I want to highlight is actually around when you copy an estimate. And specifically in that, what we've done is we've now given the ability to essentially remove or keep the quantities. And a lot of this is done because we know that different users in Buildxact will want to create new estimates a couple different ways. And one of them is sometimes just by copying an old estimate. And so in that, typically the quantities, you need them removed and you want to remove the plans and the takeoffs, plans and measurements rather, and maybe remove the statuses. And so really what this formula gives you is just sort of the bare essentials, the skeleton of it. So, your categories, your items, and then I've left specs and my quote content on as well. But it's essentially the skeleton for then in that newly created estimate, newly copied, go in, upload some plans, start to do your takeoffs, and again, to fill it back out to its respective place for that new purposes of the new estimate. Another reason where this is really helpful is, and I hark on this all the time during my one-on-one training sessions, but when it comes to building templates, I find that one of the easiest ways for people to build templates is essentially to iterate off of your old estimates. And so that's really just to say that over time, you might look back and say, gee, I'm copying this one a lot. So what you might look at doing is when you copy it, you obviously make a new estimate out of that, but then you can convert that copy with 0 quantities into a template. So it's a really handy way to basically take the little estimates, convert it, bring it to a template, strip out all the information you don't need. So then you can get in and actually start to enter that key elements of what that template should have. So, all those extra categories or items that maybe haven't quite made it in, but will to be a part of the template. And you might even go ahead and pre-fill it with quantities and other items as well. So really, really handy. And again, lots of little things there, but they really start to open up that estimate and the estimate template section to make life a little bit easier. Sort of related to that, along the same veins of what I've been talking about here today, is that what you can do now as well is you can actually make an estimate from an old job or from a new job. It doesn't really matter, but typically it'd be an old job. And the reason why we've done this is that we know that, again, a lot of people, when they're creating estimates or estimate templates, it can be really hard to try to think of every single thing that you might eventually need to quote into that estimate. Again, some people don't always quote down to every bracket and box of nails and bit of caulking, but a lot of people do, and we want to make sure we accommodate for you based on your style. So this is really handy because essentially you can take a fully fleshed out job and then turn it into an estimate, which then paves the way most likely for you to convert it into a template. But then it has all of those items in there, all those little nitty gritty items. They're going to be in there. They're going to have a home, and then you can basically just pre-fill the costs. So next time you do that type of project, you're more likely to get right on the dot of the items because you don't potentially have thousands of dollars of items you might have forgot or might have missed out or potentially didn't consider as a part of that estimating process. So highly recommend this. I really love it, and it's getting a lot of really good feedback, especially for a lot of our users in those early days of using Buildxact that just take a job, convert it to an estimate, and voila. Like I said earlier, it's pretty much you've created a template. Okay, so I'm gonna just keep going here. And I'm going to jump back into an estimate just to drill in a few other things here that we have recently launched. And something I really love, and I know my colleague Dan loves this feature, but what we were getting asked quite a bit is just to make some of the information in Buildxact easier to export out. So for that, in the estimate costings, as well as in the actual costings, which I'll talk about here which I'll show you in a moment, under the cog here, you have your stock standard ability to print your categories and items, and your allowance items. But at the very bottom, we now give you the ability to dump basically this entire screen into an Excel format. So that can be used for various purposes. Primarily, we find that a lot of people want to go back and just do some further analysis or reporting, or really just leverage off of Excel to do some further investigation or whatever they might need. And so that export to Excel is going to give you an Excel-friendly version of that for you to basically do what you need to do in there around, again, whatever you need to do in there essentially. So again, really minor thing, but for many people, especially if you're somewhat comfortable with Excel, it's a really powerful way just to conduct a lot of good investigation. Now, the other area I mentioned is also been across too, is going to be into the job under the actual costings. We know this one typically gets exported more often than not, because obviously this will include not only things like your estimates, but also how much you actually spend and your variance and all those other items and tax and all that sort of stuff. So this is especially important for a lot of people as they look back on jobs. Buildxact will give them a pretty good level of, where do they go wrong? Where do they go right? But one thing I know a lot of people like to do is actually by leveraging this item type, to drill down a little bit more to see, hey, did they go over a lot in labor? Did they go over a lot in materials? Maybe based on other sorts of formulas and stuff, you can really drill down to get some further analysis just to sort of help inform and better educate for future estimating and job management purposes. So definitely worthwhile to check that out if you haven't already. Give it an export, check it out. And again, lots happening in there. Okay. Next up, we're going to jump back into our estimate, and we want to talk a little bit about some recipes. So let me just pop open this ground floor framing recipe. Oh, sorry, it's accepted. That's why it's not letting me. I'm just going to mark this as unaccepted. Great. And let me just pop open a recipe here for our example. I'm just going to browse. Definitely worth a quick note as well. In fact, I was just chatting with our team about this today. We've actually just rolled out some additional prices and assemblies in here. So we've got, I think it's well over 200 in this list, but we've been able to work with some fantastic builders who have been able to build some great recipes based with common items and common prices, just to further help sort of supercharge this price, this implementation of these in your business. But let me quickly jump down to a different one here. Let me grab my, there we go. That's the one I want. Staring at these things all day. I've got myself a little bit backwards. There we go. And we'll choose this one. All right, awesome. So what we want to talk a little bit about today is the implementation of UOM increment and UOM min. And so let's just say, for example, I've gone ahead and I have done my takeoff here. Well, what's going to happen is quite often with the incremental takeoffs, you're going to get various sort of, point decimal numbers of something. And this isn't each. So we're trying to say, well, you're not going to go in and buy 0.75 of a stud. That doesn't make sense. So what we can do is we can use the UOM increment essentially to help round up to the nearest unit of measurement essentially there. So again, it's just going to take it. It could be, by 2.5 or whatever the particular length of or number of material or the increment measure. In this case, I'm just looking at each. So I'm just going to simply round that up and it'll take it up to the next number. So now I can go in and say, yep, now I need 421 sticks. Sort of related to that is also the UOM minimum, because what we knew was happening quite a bit is you might do a takeoff and go, well, and this is not necessarily the greatest example, but it makes sense still, that you might go, well, there's 421 of those items, but I can only buy in a minimum of a certain amount. So what you can do is you could say, let's say I can only buy these in, let's say a 500 bundle or something like that. So when I do that, it's just going to, regardless of what measurement it's gone through with the unit quantity times the overall area, and regardless of the UOM included, it's essentially going to round it up to a minimum there. So again, it's a great way to sort of meet those minimum threshold requirements of purchasing of a certain amount. So quite common in things like tile, again, you can't just buy 3 tiles, you got to buy a box of the tiles. So again, it's going to round up to those particular measurements there. So again, just doing everything we can to try to really unlock the power of recipes, and specifically around, as with recipes in general, being able to convert an area takeoff into an orderable number of items. So really helpful there. Okay. So on that is really it for us here today on our What's New webinar. Covered a lot of great stuff here today. Really, hopefully this has inspired you to, if you haven't already, start to check out some of the things we've talked about, whether it be the client portal, leveraging the reminders on the dashboard, all the way through to checking out some of the labs features, or looking at your recipes again and seeing how the UOM minimum or UOM increment can sort of help make those a little bit, sort of help increase the usage of those in your Buildxact system. On that, quick reminder or quick note as well that following up from today's webinar, there will be an email coming out shortly thereafter. In that email, there's going to be a recording of this webinar. So if you want to go back and watch some certain things again, you're welcome to. There's also going to be links to some of the content we talked about today. So if you want to go back and look at, again, dashboard or labs, then again, that the email will have all those links in there. And as always, it's going to have links to reach out if you need any further support, or if you need access to check out our videos. And maybe, hey, I've inspired you today, where maybe you've kind of ignored the leads area, been busy in estimates and jobs, but maybe some of these enhancements are making you think, yeah, I do want to check out that leads area. So you can always check out our videos. And again, quick links in those emails following up from today. So on that, I'll park here for a few moments. Haven't had a ton of questions. Matthew just sent across a thank you. And thank you very much, Matthew, for your time. But I'll stick around here for a quick moment to see if anybody has any final questions. But otherwise, I hope everybody has a great rest of your day and look forward to having you again out for a webinar. Oh, awesome. A couple more people sending across their thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you, Luke. Yeah. Mike. Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. Darren. I'm just going to say first name. Darren just asks, he just asked, will the UM inclusive or UM save when you save a recipe? And yes, it does. We have got this question a few times with the implementation of those. What's the best way to sort of look at your existing recipes? And I generally tell people the best thing to do is go into your catalog section and you can go through the recipes sort of individually and update them accordingly in there. That's kind of the easiest way, in my opinion, to sort of update them. I'm sure many of your recipes might not even need that, but it is just a good opportunity, especially if there's some really common recipes. Jump into your catalogs, jump into your recipes, and just have a quick browse, and you can update them there. So then next time you pull the recipe into an estimate, it'll have all that in there. So, all right, awesome. Give it another quick moment here, see if there's any final questions, see if there are a few people leaving, which is quite all right. Hopefully it just means I've answered all your questions. Yep. All right. So I might end it there for today. If you did have any follow-up questions, please do feel free to reach out to our support team, which you can do via the send us a message here. But on that, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks again, everybody. We'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye now.